Good luck, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome for the last day of Catalyzing Change Week. Thank you for joining us today and throughout the week. We're very excited to have you here with us. And today we have a very important conversation, which is around the role of youth and the intergenerational collaboration from an African perspective. We will be sharing a little bit more about the speakers and Wally, who will be moderating this discussion. But before we move forward, I would like to share the video for today.
Namaste. I'm Dr. Megha Phansarkar from Mumbai, India, the co-chair of Catalyst Change Week 2025. As Catalyst Change Week 2025 reaches its final day, we turn our attention to innovation in education, the foundation on which every other system of change is built. Education innovations are transforming the way we learn and teach. From adaptive learning platforms, AI-driven tutoring systems, identification of learning gaps, to ensuring more interactive and engaging methods of sharing knowledge. The classroom and learning has been democratized irrespective of where you are and what language you speak. It is about equipping people with skills, values, and imagination to create future of possibilities. Across today's session, you will see how innovations are weaving new methods and models of learning, linking education to well-being, technology, financial sustainability, intergenerational collaboration, and cultural knowledge. These conversations remind us that learning never ends. It grows and evolves with us. Transformational education is inclusive, creative, and grounded in dignity. And when every voice has a place in shaping it, education becomes a driving force for more just and resilient societies. As we close this week, let us carry forward the spirit of curiosity and collaboration that education inspires. Because in every learner lies the possibility of a better future. Welcome to the session presented by Catalyst now. Thank you.
Super. And for those who are not familiar about Catalyst Now, we are a dynamic movement of global social innovators that are transforming systems and driving sustainable change to advance the UN SDGs. We are more than 6,200 innovators that are collaborating and accelerating the collective impact. If you want to learn more, I'm going to leave some links in the chat. And I would also love to invite you to today's informative session at 2 p.m. CET. In case you want to learn a little bit more about Catalyst, we will be there with Madalena and Leslie from the selection team. And then I would also like to start the conversation before I move it over, before I pass it over to Wally. Something we would like to do as well is to give you a challenge. So what is one keyword that captures your expectation for this session? So every time there is, for instance, you feel that the word has been used to satisfy your expectations, you can expand a little bit more about this keyword. So feel free to think of a keyword, and every time that you feel that it has, let's say, satisfied your expectations, you can expand a little bit more on that word. So I want to thank you as well to all our ecosystem partners and also our partners and supporters who have been made up, thanks to them, this is possible. And now I will pass it over to Wally. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Maria. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here and welcome to today's session on youth and intergenerational collaboration, an African perspective. I think this is an exciting topic for me as a young African who is really passionate about the continent and how we can work together across various generations to build the future that we want for our continent. Before I introduce my speakers, we've heard about the promise of Africa's youth. 60% of our population is young people, and it means there's a lot of creativity, energy, and insights to drive change across the continent. And to unlock the future we want for this continent, it means we have to work across various generations, leveraging on the learnings, the experiences, and institutional memories of the older generation, combined with the interesting perspectives, the creativity, the innovation, and energy of young people. I think combining this in various sectors of public service, business, civil society will drive and build the Africa that we want. For today's sessions, three important themes you should remember is that we want to see why intergenerational collaboration matters. The second is that I want to see how this works in real practice. What does co-creation and co-leadership across generation looks like? And our amazing panelists will be sharing from their experience what this looks like in real life. And lastly is that how do we then design and continue to sustain this impact to have networks and frameworks that provide space for intergenerational collaboration across the various industries and sectors that exist. Without further ado, I would like to welcome our amazing lineup of panelists. I'll start with Gomulemo Madigetla, who is the founder of UNGWA Africa. She's experienced in various sectors and industries across the continent, and she has also sat on several boards. We also have Sophia Otto, who is the program and community lead at the Schwab Foundation team of the World Economic Forum. We have Leslie Mudimu. She's a social impact professional, and she's also part of the Intergenerational Bridge Initiative at Catalyst Now. And last but not the least is Chitundu Malunda, who is an investment professional and a product development specialist, who is also part of the Intergen mentorship program at Catalyst Now. Without further ado, we'll move and get reflections and insights of our panelists on this very important topic for today. I will start with Leslie. Leslie, I hope you can hear me.
I can hear you.
Great. Welcome once again, and it's a pleasure to have you on this interesting panel. You, as a young person yourself, we've seen that people continue to describe Africa's youth as the greatest asset that we have on the continent. But we've seen that there's also gaps in intergenerational trust and collaboration. If you look at the crop of leadership that exists, not just in public offices, but across boards, is that you see a lot of older people there. From your own perspective, what does intergenerational collaboration mean in practice? And why does it matter for Africa's transformation?
So to me, intergenerational collaboration in practice looks like co-creating, leaning into each other's strengths and weaknesses, co-learning or knowledge exchange, and also opening up opportunities. And I think the only way to do all of this is through speaking to each other. So intergenerational dialogue and understanding each other's strengths and weaknesses and how they can complement each other. I think there's so much wisdom that comes with senior professionals or older generations. And they also have that experience of addressing systemic change in Africa and trying to come up with solutions to some of the challenges on the continent. And I think learning from them allows us as young people to identify patterns and previously tried approaches so that we can enable ourselves to reimagine what solutions look like and we can co-create with them from experience. And I think it's so important for Africa's transformation because young people bring the energy and the hope, while older people bring the wisdom and the experience. And I believe that this combination can drive Africa forward. And I think to do this and to achieve this, there is a level of vulnerability that is required on both ends for this to be a success. Senior leadership and the older generations need to understand that young people are not a threat, and that energy might come across as if it's disruptive. It's not. It's energy, it's hope, it's and that energy can be redirected towards positive things with some guidance and structure and mentorship. And this also makes sure, I think this acknowledgement also makes sure that young people are included meaningfully, so that there's no tokenism. And I believe that this can also be done by just creating opportunities that are in existing structures for young people to take on a leading role. And I think as young people, we also need to be equally vulnerable enough to understand we might have the knowledge, but we don't have the experience. And there's nothing wrong with starting out and learning and shadowing people and gaining more from people who've walked the path already. So I do believe that once we get these conversations going, or this collaboration and synergy of energy, there's a lot that we can do on the continent.
Thank you so much, Leslie. I think that was really insightful. You sharing about how it's important that both sides must have a level of vulnerability to want to learn, and for also the older generation to want to share their experience and see that this energy with the right guidance and wisdom can be channeled to build the Africa that we want. Thank you so much. Sophia, in just to pass it over to you, the same question in your own experience and also working for a more global program, what do you think intergenerational collaboration means in practice, and why does it matter for Africa's future?
Thank you, Wally, and thank you, Leslie, for already kicking off the discussion. So just to complement what Leslie has already shared. So for us, maybe at the Schwab Foundation and even at the World Economic Forum, and for a few of us working on Africa, as we said, it's the youngest continent. It's also showing that by 2030, about 42% of the world's youth is going to come from Africa. So then looking at that level of scale, it means that intergenerational collaboration is not even optional. It's actually essential if we want to collectively move forward as a continent. And then, like Leslie mentioned, to do that, I think, first of all, to build that trust, it means intentionality. It means that we have to be intentional in bridging the two worlds together. And then it means, like she mentioned, one generation respecting the experience of the other, and the other one also respecting that agency and that digital fluency and that fresh energy that the young people also bring together. And then what I want to highlight in our work, we're also trying to bring that attention to the fact that young people are not leaders of tomorrow. As we like to say, throw the jargon around, they're actually leaders of today, and they're already leading transformative change in so many ways, right? So to do that, it means that we have to create solutions that are with young people and not for young people. So if you want to create solutions that are in tandem with the young people, it means that they have to be they have to be in the boardrooms actively contributing. They have to be part of policy making, actively contributing to these policy makings. And they also have to be part of creating solutions with the community. So I think, like I meant, just to wrap up, it would really means just the two generations coming together, because I believe that the experience of just one generation alone is not going to scale. And then also just the agency, or maybe the fluency of another generation is also not going to adapt. But if you bridge those two gaps, those two generations together, I think the ideas you get, it goes just beyond ideas. It's ideas that are really grounded and that are also resilient, so that can stand the test of time. So that's thank you.
Thank you so much, Sophia. I really liked how you said young people are not just leaders of tomorrow, but they are also leaders of today, because they have to play an active role in co-leading and co-creating solutions that impact them, especially with our continent that has a lot of young people. So thank you for sharing that insight. I'll now pass it over to Chitundu to build on what Leslie and Sophia they've mentioned. Is that in your own work, given that you work around investment and product development, is that have you witnessed a moment where intergenerational collaboration has worked and how we had a very impactful outcome?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And you know, just to start by building on what my fellows have already spoken about, I think the very first thing that we need to remember is that the older generation is not phasing out, but more leaving us buttons to continue drilling with, you know, the Africa that we want to see, the exercises, the experiences. We need to learn from that and use that as platforms to pivot ourselves going further. Have I seen where intergenerational collaboration has worked? I think I could point at myself. I am in a very interesting space with regards to investments, and it's not very common that you see, first of all, women leading in such industries. And then also, it's not very common that you see a young person like myself standing on platforms that are, you know, standing in rooms where there's people much, much older than I am. But you see, the most important thing is that I have used the experiences of the older generation and the mentors that I have in my life and the people that I look up to and the people that I use to stand on their shoulders. Those are the talents that I am tapping from, and then inadvertently also assisting or spreading out my hand so that I can then pass that information on to other people and other spaces that would be needing such information. I've also got another example of where I have seen this working perfectly, and I want to make reference to the mentorship programs that I have participated in inside the Catalyst movement. I participated in one last year, and that had professionals from different walks of life. And there were young, very vibrant, very innovative minds that were participating in that mentorship program. And one of the things that we were doing is basic expertise. We were coming into to provide different types of expert services to those innovators. And that worked so perfectly because a lot of the people that we were looking at or that we were mentoring ended up providing, you know, positive feedback. Oh, this worked for me because of this and this and this, and this worked for me because of this and this. So the importance of this is, just as Leslie said, it's leaning on the shoulders of the people that have come before us and using their wisdom to pivot ourselves to establish even greater things. Because at the end of the day, innovation is nothing. Innovation experiences without experience. So even if you're great at an innovation, as long as you don't have the experience or you have some sort of past, you know, information, it would be very difficult for you to proceed with your innovation. So I think that's where I'm at, and that's how I'm thinking. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Itundu, for sharing your experience and also letting us know that you yourself you've benefited from intergenerational collaboration with the type of mentors that you have that has assisted you to grow in the field you work in. To our audience, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. We'll take them at the end of the panel. To bring it back to Leslie, Leslie, you work as a social impact professional. What do you think is the biggest barrier in preventing meaningful collaborations between younger and older generations, and how can we begin to dismantle such barriers?
So, you know, I think I identified two things as barriers that have limited intergenerational collaboration. And I draw this from my own experience. I've always been the youngest person in the room. And in the space that I'm in, a lot of the more experienced people are much older than me. And I've often had to lean on them actually to learn so much that I know today. And I think from that reflection, I've identified that the first thing is cultural barriers, especially if we're speaking about this on the continent in Africa. So two things, cultural and institutional barriers are preventing meaningful collaboration. When I speak about cultural barriers, I'm speaking about the social norms that we have on the continent across different countries, groupings, tribes, etc., around those norms around engaging elders and respectability levels. And I believe that it's created some sort of a wall between generations. We have cultural norms that make it so difficult for young people to openly question elders, have differing perspectives, or even take the leading role in designing and delivering initiatives. And the second one, I think, would be institutional barriers, within organizations as well. Possibly you're scared that you're going to get reported to HR for subordination, or you're working in an institution that possibly does not have psychological safety for you as a young person to openly share your perspective. And I think what fuels both these barriers is that, again, going back to the dynamics between the generations, is a failure of trust, right? And I think, especially speaking from the workplace context, to some extent, if you're a younger person, you're almost seen as a child, right? And I understand that, there's always age dynamics, age differences, etc. But I also think it is important to remember that, despite the age difference, that young person probably went through university and is actually qualified to be in the space they're in. The difference is they lack the experience. And this is where I feel like, as a young person, you then also need to be humble enough to understand that you lack experience. I've seen this so much in my work, where I've worked on various projects supporting systems change initiatives. And when I started out about 3 years ago, I did not know anything about facilitation, designing processes, etc. And I was put on projects where, in some context, I had to shadow other people. And I think I can also say I'm privileged enough to have been working in institutions that allow that learning to come through. And I would openly, vulnerably say, I want to learn this and I don't know this. Can you teach me? And I'm also a person who learns by doing. And a lot of what I've learned is why now, with Humanities Bridge Consultants, I'm building up a consultancy of young people that have the knowledge and the expertise, and are wanting to get into the field. And to pick up on the point about young people are the leaders of today. And we have a team of young people who have the knowledge and the expertise and are coming from different organizations. So if they've gone through the training, and we're coming together to form teams to say, listen, we have the energy and the solutions, and we want to work with people. And if that means collaborating with older people, then that's about it. And I think the best way we can sort of dismantle these barriers is to invest again in building trust on both ends, and give us the opportunities. We're young, yes, we have the energy, the hope, and we also want to learn from your experience. Give us the opportunity, give us mentorship and mentoring. And I think, as young people, for us to also be trusted, we need to ask questions, we need to show up, we need to make the effort, and we need to make sure that we deliver. That is the only way that we can build trust. There's ways to structurally do this within organization. You could develop comprehensive onboarding processes that include understanding new recruits and their appetite for learning and their ways for working. You can also create in-house mentorship initiatives where young people are shadowing within their departments, have open learning sessions where both the older generation and the younger generations are co-learning, to show that learning is an ongoing thing. You never reach a point where you know everything. Even the more older and more experienced people have areas that they want to upskill in. So if you create those open spaces where both, the older generations, the younger generation are holding hand to hand, walking hand to hand and learning together, I think that helps. And it also shows to young people that learning is lifelong. And, there's always room for curiosity. There's always room to improve engagements with the younger generation. But I do think instilling this means even us now as young people need to understand that we are young, and there's also people that are also younger than us. So, for example, through our mentorship program, it's a mentorship program that's meant to support humanities students who have just graduated or are on the way to graduation. And a lot of our mentors have about 5 years experience, and they have that entry level kind of experience, and they can hold someone's hand who's just graduated, just to show that there's still learning that can even be done. As a young person, you can still give back, and I think that's also the value of programs like the Intergen mentorship program, where it's, let's come together, let's learn, let's co-learn, let's come up with solutions. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Leslie, for that comprehensive response to the question. I think you've done justice to it on how we can dismantle both the cultural and institutional norms, and even for young people to have it at the back of their minds that there is also a younger generation, and you must also be actively creating open spaces and continually learn about the peculiarities of each generation and how you can hold hands together and work together. Thank you very much. Chitundu, and with your experience in finance, investment, and product development, is that one of the challenges we've seen from young Africans, young entrepreneurs, is the limitation when it comes to access to finance. And more often than not, these ideas are deemed as high risk and would not easily have access to capital to either build out these ideas or to scale. So how can sort of senior leaders in this space who have been investing in various businesses start assisting young, not just young people, but the ecosystem to think towards shifting the perception that youth are not high risk or an opportunity that will build out the kind of future we want to see on the continent? And how can we start co-investing in youth-led solutions?
Okay. Yeah, you're hitting a nerve there. That question, I think I get a lot of questions around that topic, right? What can the older folk do? What can the older generation do to sort of make it easier for the younger generation to be able to access financing? And why is it that the younger generation are perceived as high risk? Well, the biggest response or the easiest response for me to give to you as to why they're regarded as high risk is just because they are high risk. Our generation right now is perceived as very innovative. We're taking risks. We're open to taking risks, while the older generation are a bit more risk averse. So because of the fact that we're a bit more willing to tolerate a little bit more risk than the older folk, we are slightly more risky than they like or they would want us to be, right? So that's the long and short of the answer. We are a bit more risk tolerant than the older generation. But then what can they do to assist us in accessing finance? Or what is it that we can also do to expose ourselves to their type of thinking and, inadvertently accessing capital that in most cases they are providing? I will answer this in twofold, and my first response is on the supply side. The supply side being, what can the older generation do? I think first of all is to be able to interact with the younger generation and to buy into their thought processes, right? I think that's one thing. Platforms like the Catalyst movement assist us in engaging with each other, right? I joined Catalyst maybe 2 years ago, and I never at any one point thought I would have Leslie's contact number and I can say what's up to her, and I've never met her. I never thought that I could ever know somebody from the Netherlands and speak to her like she's my sister. I never thought from anywhere near that I would be speaking to somebody called Brian from Uganda. And, all I know is that, oh, Brian does this, and Brian leads an impact organization that is trying to preserve the ecosystem of the Victoria Falls, the River Victoria, Lake Victoria, sorry. And, such interactions, such collaborations assist us in being able to open ourselves up to understanding what the next person is saying, right? And that also works with regards to our smaller initiatives, our smaller businesses. If I want to access capital, and I know that Celia from the Netherlands works in an organization that does this and this and this and this, I can then collaborate with her. I can interact with her and ask her, Celia, what do I need to do to be able to access such kind of capital? And that also works vice versa. The suppliers of this type of capital can then reach out to people like us and say, look, I understand that you're doing work in conservation. and most of your work is it sounds to me like it would be grant related. Is there any way we can commercialize this so that it begins to be a bit more attractive for me to invest in? And then I say, okay, this is my business model. This is how business models of my nature are structured. Let's see how we can work out something that is a bit more commercial. So interactions like these, interactions that allow for us to platforms that allow us to interact, such as Catalyst now, and then drilling even further to our intergenerational collaboration and mentorship program. That one will even allow you to have a more one-on-one conversation with the person that you're matched with. And I'm matched with a lovely lady called Beatrice from Kenya, and she's doing a lovely project where she's trying to provide capital for secondary school children. Now, she's a social innovator. It's not very easy to access commercialized capital for an initiative like that one. But if you explore the type of models I'm exploring the type of models that she can leverage on to be able to go to a commercial lending entity and ask them to provide capital for her. So, it's interactions like those that make life easier for social innovators. And then the other side is also just generally understanding, as Leslie said, understanding that I don't know everything. And the older generation, even regardless of their experiences, they don't know everything either. The times that we're living in today are very, we talked about it earlier, they're very innovative. And the technology is shifting and it's moved on so quickly. My aunt can't figure out how to use WhatsApp other than just texting. The other day I was telling her, show me what you're looking at on your screen. And she thought I was saying something that's crazy. And I'm like, you can share your screen. And she's like, what? How? I'm like, okay, it's fine. Just send me a picture, And it's things like that. And yet she works in a very able-bodied capacity, financial institution that I can walk into and ask for something like if I wanted to access financing. But she doesn't know how to use WhatsApp. So there's the irony. Yeah, so it's basically things like that. Let me stop there for now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Itundu. I think that was an insightful one, and thanks for sharing your experience. And it's a good segue to the question I have for Sophia, who works with a lot of social innovators. And the question for you is, what lessons from your experience can we build on to create more stronger intergenerational networks? Chitundu mentioned that platforms such as Catalyst now that brings people of different age categories together are very important. So in your own experience, how can we build stronger networks and create space for change makers to interact across generations?
Thanks, Wale. Yeah, so just maybe a bit of overview of what we do. At the Schwab Foundation, we bring together social change leaders. So as of now, we have about 500 of some of the world's most accomplished, seasoned social entrepreneurs who have spent decades tackling some of the world's toughest social challenges that we face today. And from them, what we've learned is that, lasting transformation would happen among many other things. But one of the things is also building ecosystems, strong ecosystems, and one of them being strong intergenerational ecosystems. And then, many of these seasoned entrepreneurs now are also thinking of connecting with young change makers, who are already, in the field. And this is important to help them to sustain the impact they're already creating, but also to get some energy from these young change makers. And also collectively, they can, build some future-ready solutions. And then on the other hand, you have young change makers who, as I mentioned, are already in the field driving change. But as Leslie mentioned, Chitundu mentioned, are also facing some systemic barriers. It could be lack of finance, it could be visibility, not getting the visibility that they need, or even operating in very fragmented ecosystems. So based on that, it's inspired us at the Schwab Foundation to also launch a new initiative, which we call the Youth and Social Innovation Initiative, particularly through the Global Shapers community, which I think a few of us in this call are members of. And the aim of this initiative is to bridge the gap between the Schwab Foundation seasoned social entrepreneurs and then the younger change makers, who are already in the field, but, have these systemic barriers so that collectively they can help each other. So that's the main idea, is to really help each other. And then we are aiming to influence some outcome areas, which I think it's some lessons that even Africa can use in building some of these strong intergenerational networks. And one of them is we need to strengthen the ecosystem around young change makers. Like, we need to ensure that the ecosystem, being the intermediaries, being the investors, being even the seasoned change makers themselves, will come together in hand with the young change makers to help remove some of these barriers that they face. Another one is also ensuring that when it comes to decision making, particularly in spaces where global agendas are set, so for instance, what we do at the World Economic Forum, in other spaces, that the young change makers are part of these decision making spaces. So in the Schwab Foundation, we've been intentional that when it comes to our regional gatherings or our convenings or our summits, we are intentional in bringing the members of the global shapers there, not just as participants, but active participants to some of the key initiative or decision makings that would take place. And then, so the idea is that when we bridge this gap, we bring the young change makers and, seasoned innovators, it's through a structured mentorship, but it's not just a one-way street. It's just one where both of them are learning from each other. So it's really, I feel it's about combining the, strategic insight and experience of the seasoned social entrepreneurs with those of the, the energy from the young innovators. Because I believe that, as my fellows have already said, if you bring innovation and you bring wisdom, you unlock more than progress, right? So you unlock progress that is lasting and that is systemic. So yeah, overall, I feel you will need to, bring the entire ecosystem together to help, support these young change makers, I'd say. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophia. I think that was really insightful on how we can strengthen intergenerational collaborations through structured networks. I'd like to welcome Gomolemo. Gomolemo, are you there?
Hello, Ole, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. Welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Apologies for joining everyone much later than the agreed time. I'm certain that the discussions have been nothing but amazing. I'm going to give a little bit of a backstory regarding why today mattered, why showing up mattered. And it's really stemming from an intergenerational relationship. Adam, who I see in the group, we met several years ago in an airport in Kenya, where we were being flown from different parts of the continent to come and be a part of something amazing, which was really strategizing for the continent with people from the continent regarding Catalyst Now and what is now called Africa Forward, led by amazing Luvuyo and an incredible team, um, Pearl and them. So I met Adam at an airport and with another fellow social entrepreneur, different leaders from were being flown in from across the continent, like I said. And that trio that we made, we were then taken to um, a golf. They wanted to make sure that we are very far from the city, anything buzzing. So we were doing the strategy work outside of the main city. So there's another 2 hour drive from the airport. And here is Adam and myself and another lady called Erica. And this is 3 different generations. We met to go and be a part of something great for the continent. We did the strategy, but guess what? We kept the relationship. It must be just over 2 years now. We've kept the relationship, and I've shown up because I see the work that Adam does with the global shapers. Amazing work that is speaking impact, all right? And for me, what is important is that we don't we don't only embrace youth because it seems to be the dogma in vogue. If you don't include youth in your mission statement, you won't get the global funding or whatnot. It's time to stop the tokenism. It's time to really acknowledge the greatness that young people carry. I'm, I'm from Botswana. And in Botswana, we have our Minister of Youth is a 26-year-old Lesego Chombo. 26 years old. Because how do you create change for young people without including them, not only at the table, but at the head of the table? So we need to go beyond scripting about the youth, the demographic dividend, about how young Africa is. We've known about that. We are a researching continent. What matters now is that young people are included, and young people are included not as a condiment, not as a seasoner of a main dish, but they are the staple. And a lot of the times, when it comes to different generations, the young people are only tapped into with a broad blanket, with a broad, unfortunately it's still a blanket. And we need to take the time to invest, the dig deeper, instead of just assuming every young person is techno savvy and this and this and that. We're still stereotyping. We are still putting them in a box. My son is turning 20 years old in a few months, right? I'm late today because I've just arrived from hospital where I took my mother, who's just under 80. So we're talking three different households in one household. Three different generations, I beg yours, in one household. And it's important that we don't use lazy metrics when we engage young people. They're not grouped as just the gen this or the gen that. Let's be genuine about the gens, right? And what's important is that we need to stop also, as young people should not be suffocated. What has come before should be a scaffolding that makes them go beyond and go higher, right? And also, I believe young people not only tend to be more curious, but they're more vocal. And until and unless, as an economy, we are open to disagreeing, we embrace disagreement in a healthy way instead of saying it's our way or the highway, then we will not understand what intergenerational leadership and legacy is. I run a mentorship program where it's really industry agnostic. But what we're seeing is that the very mentors themselves, who are mainly more on the senior side, actually benefit from the interaction from the young people. So there's subconscious reverse engagement in terms of accruing quality content and learnings. So it is reverse mentoring, even though we don't call it that. So as we engage, it's not about come and learn from me and sit at my feet and get all the wisdom, because I hold all the wisdom. And until we see young people not as takers from the wisdom holders, but invite them as those who will not only augment what exists, but challenge it. Unless we can be challenged, we cannot grow as economies, as a continent. We are seeing uprisings, and young people are saying enough is enough. Why should we wait to reach those levels? Where is the engagement? Where is the inclusiveness? As policies are designed, are we being intentional about ensuring that we hear what young people have to say? And as young people, are we also open to seeing a world from different lenses? Because until and unless we can practice some empathy, some compassion, we cannot be robust transformation yielders as a continent. Thank you, Wale.
Thank you so much for that wonderful insight, and thank you for the anecdotes on Adam. I think you've done justice to the question on how we must move beyond tokenism. and make sure young people are active decision makers in how we think of policies, products, and how we build our economy. And thank you so much for sharing that insight. Conscious of time, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat box. In the next few minutes, we'll also take your questions, so you can raise your hand. Before I move to, if there are any questions in the chat, Maria or Adam, please let me know. I would quickly go back to Leslie. Leslie, as a young professional yourself, and I want you to also speak from the perspective of a young person, how can we sort of respectfully begin to challenge systems that you mentioned the cultural norms that exist, right, with various dynamics with young people. How can we then begin to think of how we respectfully dismantle those systems and create space for young persons?
Okay. So from my experience, I think there's about 4 ways that I think we could do this. And first, again, to tie back to all of the points I've mentioned, there's that need to make an effort to learn in the areas that the areas we actually want to dismantle, understand what it is, what are the norms that you're trying to dismantle, and what are the alternatives. And I think with anything, it's important to challenge from a knowledgeable place. Because when you challenge from a knowledgeable place, it creates credibility for whatever you are challenging or whatever you are proposing as an alternative. Do not just challenge for the sake of challenging. And that segues into the second point. Also challenge knowing that you have alternative perspectives and solutions. So I think it's important. The only way we can effectively challenge inherited systems is to also move away from complaining, but be more solutions based. And if you finish school a bit more recently, you're more in touch with kind of like the classroom knowledge, and you can bring in all of these alternative opinions or perspectives. But I think it's important to also be very much solutions based. And when you actually bring a solution, it makes it easier for you to be brought into conversations. I have been in spaces where I was working in an environment where I played a role in supporting like organizational transformation. And it came from actually investing in, okay, this is the norm in this organization. How do we find an alternative norm, and actually bringing ideas? And then it goes into my third point, which is when you bring those alternative perspectives and solutions, you are also provided the opportunities to actually implement them. So that's a very amazing way to challenge the system, but be the one in the leading role challenging that system, because they can see that the points you're bringing have credibility, they're well researched, you're bringing an alternative. So there's opportunities where you can now implement and see through with things. And this is important because it allows you to also act against perceived narratives of young people, are sometimes seen as fleeting, non-committal, disorganized, etc. So if you are actually challenging systems in a meaningful way, it helps, and it also gives you opportunities to actually lead the change that you want to see. And then the last point, I think it's based on my own reflections as a young woman working as well in feminist spaces and as a young Black woman. And I think challenging inherited systems from my perspective has also meant unlearning socialized patterns. For example, misogynistic perspectives that suggest that women cannot work well together. And I think this is so false. And speaking for myself, within the Intergen program, my mentor is a Black woman, an older Black woman. Within my workspace, I am always learning from other women who are much older than me. My coach is a Black woman, and I intentionally sought her out on that basis of she is in a position that I want to see myself in the next 10 to 15 years. So as the woman, I think also breaking past barriers is that level of thinking, take initiative, share ideas, be proactive in actually contributing to the change we want to see. And I think respectful challenge, just to close off, comes from demonstrating commitment, competence, and a willingness to collaborate. So to any of the young people on this call, take initiative, research your new ideas and perspectives, and you can only succeed if you also work in collaboration with people who are more senior to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Leslie. Chitundu, could you quickly share your insights on how we can sort of redefine our systems and institutions to allow more policies and financial instruments that will allow youth inclusion in Africa's economic system?
Okay, that's a very good question. I think the best way to do it is to just collaborate. It's the best way to do it. It's the most effective way, because then you will have situations where both generations or multi-generations are listening to each other. And then also each generation being able to just put themselves out there and be able to listen and learn from the other generations. And then also with regards to policies, I think it's very important to be deliberate about certain things. So, I mean, I like what, sorry, for the life of me, I cannot pronounce her name, but my panelist from Botswana, when she talked about the 27-year-old minister on their cabinet, and those are things that we need to be intentional about. Otherwise, we're preaching to choirs that sang yesterday. Also, we need to be able to adapt, to be very adaptable. We need to learn from that. We need to understand the fact that we're living in a totally different time from that which our parents were living in, and our grandparents and our children will be living in. And it's very important for us to understand from a point, to have knowledge from a point of understanding of each generation's experiences. I'm a millennial, I'm a late millennial, and as a millennial, I understand that the older generation is not able to as quickly as adapt to technology as I am, or the Gen Zs are, and it's things like that. It's opportunities like that breed innovation, and those are the things that then begin for us, that allow for us to collaborate even stronger across various types of topics. So basically, the long and short of that answer, Wall, is collaboration and being able to listen to each other's perspectives. I like what again my co-panelist from Botswana was saying, that we need to understand that we are who we want to see. It starts from within us. It can only be if we are being, and so we need to establish who we want to be, and the only way we can be is by leaning on experiences of those that have gone before us. It's very important. But then also for us to not be careless, to be careless enough to sort of mess it up for the people coming behind us, because we're the youth that are being regarded as high risk. We don't want to mess it up so that the ones coming behind us are regarded unfinanceable or uninvestable, issues like that. So we need to make sure that we're responsible with ourselves, with the responsibilities that we've been given, and to basically just collaborate with each other. I see in the chat, I want to just, sorry, I'm going to speak about this a little bit. I see in the chat, Brian has come in, and he's talked about some of the, he's actually pointed out the fact that I was his mentor. And Brian and I participated in a mentorship last year called Time for Impact. And I was specifically helping Brian sort out his governance, and he was trying to launch a book. I'm very proud of Brian today, because he managed to launch that book, and he's having an event for the Ugandans that are in the room. He's having an event on the 13th of December, and it's going to be at the waterfront beach, and he's going to share a lot of that detail just now. But yeah, please feel free to join. And if you can't, please reach out to him and find out how you can assist him. Hello, Brian. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tunde. That was really insightful and good to see an example of collaborating across the continent. Before we take any other questions, I'll quickly like to pass it on to Sophia and Gomolemo. Sophia, in your own work, how do you think we can reshape how institutions think about leadership? And to Gomolemo, you started with a beautiful story, and how can storytelling and creative expression serve as bridges across various generations? Sophia?
Thank you, Wale. So yeah, I think having listened to what all our panelists have said, just some trends that I've seen from our work with social entrepreneurs, particularly with young social entrepreneurs, and maybe to give an overview. So currently we are doing some research on the state of social enterprise in Africa, which is then the largest research that is being done on the continent. And so it will be launched at the G20 in South Africa this month. And some of the key insights that are coming up already from this research is we're seeing that, on the African continent, about 37% of all social enterprises are being led by people, under the age of 35. And then an additional 36% are being led by people between the ages of 35 and 44. So from this research, the trends we're seeing is that close to 3/4 of all social enterprise on Africa's continent is already youth-led, right? And it's a clear sign that Africa's innovation energy is already coming from the younger generation. And it's also a sign that the institutions and even older generation will need to respect this and also adapt to that reality. And from that, some of the trends we've seen on how these young people are redefining leadership is that they are really looking more into collaborative and community-rooted leadership as opposed to hierarchical structures, which is quite something that we're used to in the African continent. And I'll give an example. We have this social enterprise called Shofco that is based in Kenya. And what Shofco is doing is that is really working with the young people in Kenya's informal settlement. And it's not just through jobs, but actually young people working hand in hand with policymakers to shape how, city planning is being done, how policy is being done. So you see that as a clear example of intergenerational leadership in action and where young people actually are on the forefront of this change. Another shift trend that we've seen from young people is that they're also changing leadership to mean one that values a lot of well-being and collective care. So they're saying that leadership, you will need to, it's not just creating impact or, the numbers and skill, but you need to take care of the people that are behind the work that you do. So it's one that is valuing rest, that is valuing community resilience, and that is also valuing that collective well-being. So I think the big picture of all is that with this trend, it's just young people are really shifting even how leadership is being done. That is leadership that is more collaborative, that is more deeply human, but also one that is more looking more ecosystem and then long-term change. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Over to you, Gomolemo.
Thank you so much, Sophia. That was excellent and a great case study that you just shared. I believe I met the founders of Shofco several years ago in San Francisco. Very inspiring couple. Really, and for me, it's intergenerational collaboration unlocks capital, it unlocks credibility, and it unlocks scale. But we have to be very, very intentional about it. I said earlier that what is important is that where we don't obsess over hierarchy, but instead we lean in terms of walking hand in hand between generations. I think once we can lock that idea that it is not either or, but that scaffolding has been presented in order for proper systems change to take place, then we are walking in the right direction. We are in an era where we desperately need market creating innovation And that requires a combination of both wisdom and just awe, a sense of wonder, right? I am blessed to have an amazing young president, um, advocate Duma Gideon Boko, and he speaks about reimagination, 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 right? And this is about understanding that both the old and the young ought to understand that it is time to rewrite the rules of transformation together. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll now take questions. I see we are out of time, so we'll take one or two questions. There is a question in the chat from Brian on how young people can strike a balance on collaboration between different generations in a way that brings value, and both to young and older people. I think some of our panelists have alluded to some examples. Is there anyone who would like to address this question or share further insight? And if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand and we'll take them.
I'd like to just add on and answer the question that Brian has proposed. So something that I've seen, because I've also, for the last year, I've been working with a lot of youth-based initiatives. And what I've seen is a lot of young people are starting up, whether it's a social enterprise, an NGO, or CSO. And what they do is create an advisory board. And that advisory board is always people that have more senior level experience working in the general area that they're doing work in. And they use that advisory board almost as a jump off to understand, like, to bring ideas to you and say, this is what we are trying to do from your experience. What do you think about this initiative? And they also learn from them and they're guided by that. So that's something that just came to mind that I think could be a good way that young people can invest in working with older generations, and also making sure like it brings value to young people and also to the older generations. They get to be, more on the pulse with what's happening right now. They get to understand how maybe normalized perspectives that they had are being challenged, and are more in touch with new emerging perspectives, solutions, ideas, etc. So I've seen that where, advisory boards kind of play that role. And I think it's a really good structure that, again, contributes to the intergenerational learning.
Thank you so much, Leslie, for that wonderful example. Pass it on to Maria, but before we do that, I would just like to get reflections from our panelists in less than 30 seconds. And I'll start with both Leslie and Chitundu, giving your experience with the intergenerational mentorship program of Catalyst Now. And if you would like to be part of this program, please feel free to join a Catalyst Now and to have the opportunity to be part of this program that matches experienced social entrepreneurs with young social entrepreneurs. It is a really exciting platform that would allow you build your transformational leadership skills and also begin to practice what we've discussed today. So I'll start with Leslie.
Thank you so much, Wale. So I'm privileged to be a mentee on the Intergen mentorship program. And I think it's been a wonderful opportunity to upskill myself, but also learn from more knowledgeable and more experienced social innovators and social entrepreneurs. And I think this program has, I think it's a treat. I'm so privileged to be in it because I joined Catalyst Now with the intention of growing my network and learning from other people. And now I get the one-on-one attention from the amazing and experienced speakers that come through to the different sessions and through my mentor. And it's been a great opportunity to actually bring really direct questions that affect not only my social enterprise humanities bridge consultants, but also our mentorship program, and co-create solutions and, share reflections about kind of the way we want to move forward with these two entities. And I think it's been a great connecting platform, great to learn from more experienced people. And I think it's a really worthy investment to anyone who's intending on really deepening their practice and scaling their efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Chitundu.
Okay, for me, I think mine is just to say to the people in the room that do not underestimate the value that is derived from programs like these. You will think that you may have it all sorted out or figured out, but when you begin to interact with the next person or with your mentor, you then realize that you actually need to draw the entire map all over again. It's very useful, and it's also very valuable, both for you as a person's growth and also for the social enterprise's structuring. Different mentors bring different perspectives to different social innovations and social enterprises. And I think it's very important to be able to participate in programs like this so that you are opening yourself to learning, to exposure. You're exposing yourself to different perspectives. And that's the most important thing. You know, the fact that you're exposing yourself to different thought processes from people that have either got experience. Sometimes it's not even that they've got experience, but they're just thinking about the way you're thinking, but in a different light. And I think that's very important. And leveraging of partnerships and platforms like the Catalyst to basically just grow your network and grow yourself and putting yourself out there as well, so that it doesn't end in scenarios like this. From now, you will be able to go and follow somebody on LinkedIn. For instance, I have now learned to pronounce the name Go Molemo. Yes. So I will follow her on LinkedIn, and I will hit her up in her inbox and say, oh, okay, we met at this event. I like the way you spoke about this. Do you think we can share each other's numbers and have a bit more of a friendlier conversation from what we just had? So it's platforms like this that, number one, grow your network, that expose you to different perspectives, and also that build you in ways that you never did think. There's a very famous pastor here called Bruce Musidi, who runs Mount Zion Christian Church. And he basically was talking about, last Sunday actually, he was talking about how people in the Bible also looked up to people, and gave an example of David, who depended on Samuel and looked up to Samuel, and also fed off Samuel's leadership. So, I mean, it's practices that have come from way back, and they will not stop with us. The most important thing for us to do is to use platforms like these to leverage, to pivot ourselves, and to grow ourselves. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Isunde. That was very insightful. Sophia, in one sentence, how do we make intergenerational collaboration the norm and not the exception?
Thank you. And thanks to all the panelists for this very insightful conversation. I think I've learned a lot from all of you. So just to wrap up, I think one of the things that stood out, but also I really appreciate, is that, if we need to move away from tokenism. And to do that, it really will involve real trust, real collaboration, and co-leading together. So it's not leadership being handed from one generation to the other, but both generations leading hand in hand to create change. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Kumulemo, in one sentence, how do we make intergenerational collaboration the norm? I think Kumulemo has challenges with her connection. Hopefully she's able to join. But in the meantime, I will pass it to Maria. Thank you very much.
Super. So again, thank you very, very much. I think that in case that Gomolemo cannot unmute, maybe we can wrap up the session. But I wanted to give a big thank you to all the panelists and to you, Wally, as well, to moderate this session. I see that there is a lot of takeaways. So if you want to share it in your social media and tag us, feel free to do so. And we hope to see you at 3 p.m. CET in the closing ceremony. We still have a lot of sessions, so feel free to register for today. And you will find the recording of today's session in our YouTube channel by Monday. So again, thank you very, very much, and hope to see you very soon in the next cohort, potentially, of the Intergen mentorship program. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.